losing too many women. Stop the violence against women. We need to love our women and take care of the women. Stop abusing the women. We're losing too many women, yeah. Stop the violence against women. We need to love our women, take care of the women, stop abusing the women.
Welcome back here at this town meeting sponsored by Zonta. Zonta says no. Join the campaign to end violence against women. And if you've been tuned in for the last hour and a half or even more, you heard a wonderful panel here this evening. And they have covered many of the subject matters, many bases with respect to violence in our country. And while we have many questions for them, we are just about out of time here, but there are a number of people who have already lined up at the podium, and I'm going to ask them to be as brief as possible so that we can get as many questions in as possible. We begin with the gentleman. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. One question, I just want one question because since the information is given out that gender-based violence mostly occur, men perform these violence. I just wanted to find out from Dr. Roberts. With the programs you have enacted and put forward, what type of response are you getting from the men who have been the perpetrators of this gender-based violence as well, and is there any, the response you're getting from them, is there any positive changes or things being done?
You're looking at two different things. You're looking at men who have accepted that they have a problem and they are prepared to seek help. Those men you can help and you can have excellent results. In fact, I believe that, and the evidence scientifically is shown that practically all of these men, they will change their life around, and they will continue to do so, and they will have healthier relationships. But it's like an alcoholic. You must first accept that you have a problem. Now that's totally different from in the general public, where we have a culture of, I was just mentioning that we don't appreciate what one really means by gender. And it's very simple for us to say, I am man and I am woman, as biologically that's what I am. Because when I was born, they looked at me and they said, you're a man and you're a woman. Now, that's totally different from gender. Gender is what you think you are to be and how society sees you, and more importantly, how society thinks you should be. And so when you look at all of those factors now, that is gender. And so while I might be masculine, while I might be born physically a man, I might think, listen, I'm a woman trapped in a man's body.
Absolutely.
I don't like the way I dress. I like to look differently. Now, so when you look at a society, we have a macho society. This is what a man's supposed to be and how a man is supposed to be. So just to actually get into conversation for men to realize that they are a problem and how they see women and that how they control women and the whole issue of power and dominance, that's a natural thing for them.
Good. Very good. Thank you very much. And Dr. Roberts, you might say that women are violent against women as well. Because
no, it's not the way
violence begets violence,
no,
eh?
No, it's the other way around. I'm happy you just had to make a note.
Yes.
You see, we are talking about violence where a man against a woman, but there are two other prongs to this.
Yes.
And that is the violence of man against man and the violence of man against himself.
Yes.
So that's suicide. So when we look at this whole issue of violence, what we find is that it is you can't solve the problem of gender-based violence without looking at the other two. And you have to look and see why is it that we men are susceptible to this violence. And that is what this whole issue of patriarchy is about, how we perceive ourselves.
Good, very good. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. My question is, what programs have been put in place for those students or high school students who have came from homes from domestic violence? There's prevalent that there are fights happening in schools against boys and girls. It's recorded on videos, and I'm just wondering, what have been in place for these kind of students?
Very good. Thank you. Dr. Curry?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. Just to say that the Department of Gender and Family Affairs has a number of programs in place, mainly to do with sexual harassment and bullying. We've been targeting primarily 7th grade students, and I'm going to say this by just mentioning something I said briefly in my presentation, the issue of resources. Very, very small team. We have 4 staff there, and so it's a little bit difficult for us to reach across schools. Now, when we've been doing our work targeting mainly 7th graders, I know the Ministry of Education has said to me, can you reach 9th graders? Can you reach, they're wanting me to go to more grades. Unfortunately, we're not at this time able to do so, but we're certainly recognizing that there is a challenge. We did something with senior high school students where when we worked with 8 public high schools here in the country. And I will say we had more than 100 and, no, it's around 190 responses from students who had indicated to us that they wanted to be a part of it. And so we're hoping to be able to continue this program, and what we did with that was really to use social media. So we open a chat line for 2 hours with those students, and they get a chance to freely speak about what's going on, and that's when you really hear students speaking about what's happening to them and in their lives, and that's when they list for you a whole litany of issues that they're facing, and you realize that a lot of this violence that they're perpetrating out there is really something that started for them in the homes. And so we expect to be continuing that, and we're hoping that we can get the additional resources that we need to be able to do that, and to do it more effectively in partnership with the Ministry of Education.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I add something?
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
I would
Go
like
ahead, sir.
to add something quickly to that question. Precisely today, we were in AAF Adderley, working. The Pan American Health Organization has been working in this project with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health, trying to implement a program to address violence against school-age children. We're trying to, so we are starting, and I hope that you're gonna hear more about it. But the idea is trying to protect victims of violence, putting a safety net, a system that they can reach out and we can address the problems of violence that are any type of problems of violence, but one of the focus is precisely issues of violence against women, intimate partner, which start sometimes very early in life, but also situations of child abuse or other problems that children can be facing at home, that we're trying to build something, as I said, in partnership with the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education. So there's different initiatives that we're working on that, and I'm thanks for raising that question.
Thank you very much.
My question is, I would like to know what is it you can do as a citizen, a family member, mother, grandmother, when you witness the violence, the domestic violence against your family member, and that victim refuses to press charges, and the police is saying to you that it's nothing you can do unless the victim press charges. Is there anything you can do as a citizen, as a family member, to help that person? And is it possible for that person to be psychologically affected in such a way that they cannot stand up for themselves?
Donna Nichols?
Oh, very good question. There's always something that we can do, okay? But one of the things that we have to understand is that as horrible as it may be, we have to allow people to make the decision of what they want in their lives. What we do as family members and the community, the word I use is we hold space for them. So what we do is that we don't abandon them, even though we get really frustrated. You don't abandon them, and they know that it takes time. So you give information. You might share a pamphlet with them. You might just have a conversation, you know, just talk about it a little bit more, not in a judgmental way. You have to be very careful about this. It can't be in a judgmental way. It would be, say you start the conversation, what is it that you really want for your life? Is this what you want for your life? Is this how you want it to be? What else can you do?
Okay.
Because what you're trying to do is create options for them to be able to work through. Remember, they're already trapped. They're already not even themselves. and their process of thinking and so on has been eroded. So the main thing is for you to be there with them, hold space, stand in that space, and do not abandon them, and do not say mean, unkind, derogatory things to the person,
Good.
because that's the worst thing that you could do.
Thank you so very much. Donna Nichols, you know, we have some very able speakers here this evening, and they're a little long-winded. Go ahead, Mrs. Sands.
Yeah, I just want to advise her that if she goes to that same Protection Order Act, the Act states who can make an application on behalf of that person, and that would include the Commissioner of Police can make an application on behalf of that person. Any member of the household who's witnessing it can make, that's what the Act is saying. And so if we follow this Act, members of the household or the Commissioner of Police can make application on behalf of that person who is being injured.
Thank you. Pastor Scavala, just to throw a little wrench in things here this evening, you as a pastor, and you know that women will say that you should walk away from violence and just leave. What do you say as a pastor when you hear the scriptures say, or the vows say, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, and until death? What do you say?
Until death do they part. I think I made reference to one of the issues having to do with the misinterpretation and application of biblical texts. God never intended for his creation to be diminished. And the ideal is for us to be together until death do us part. But we do not live in an ideal world. And sometimes we have to make decisions as individuals to save our lives. You know, when you go on a plane, the first thing they tell you is that you have to put on the mask yourself first, and then look after, because if you don't do that and you're dead, then you can't help anybody else. All right, so we live in a very practical world. And we must remember that this is the ideal, but we don't always have the ideal to work with. And so sometimes we have to help people to generate options as counselors. We can't tell people always what to do, but we could provide them with the options and assume that God has made them intelligently enough that somewhere along the line, with the power of the Holy Spirit and also good counseling, they will make the right decisions.
Very good. Thank you so very much. Final question for the evening.
Good night. My question is on...
the lady there, we'll accommodate you. Go ahead.
My question is on the behalf of the men, because men too face domestic violence in terms of, like, I experienced like an old neighbor get knocked down and beat up from his girlfriend and his wife. So, like, what could we do, like, to support them, because they feel ashamed to go forward, to, for help, because they get turned away from the police station. Like, they don't feel as if a man should seek that kind of help.
Dr. Roberts?
You've just reiterated what I talked about. At the end, we live in a society where big man doesn't allow a woman to beat them, and if a woman beats you, you're less than a man. So that is where we actually need to. I think it's very similar to the answer she mentioned. We have to create a space for them. We need to allow them to say, listen, is this how you want to be with that person? Would you like a better communication? Let me give you something to read and look at this scenario and see where you are in this and how you can improve yourself. I'm here to listen to you. And you can't continue to beat him with a stick saying, boy, what kind of man are you? And yes, but men, unfortunately, we are brought up where we don't talk long, Right. And so there are a lot of issues that deal with this man thing that we have, and that's really the center of our problem.
Good.
We want to thank you all so much for joining us here tonight as we end our program. We had a great discussion here with our guest panelists, and we want to call our president, Ms. Claudine Farquharson, as she comes to give the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It has been a really great evening, and there has been a lot of information that has been disseminated. And I would like for us to not only take that information for ourselves, but for those who we are here to help. And there are so many persons. We've heard all about the programs, the initiatives, and everything that is being done. But what we've also learned, that I've come to realize, is that there is still so much more that can be done. And so this evening, I'm here to say thank you, a great big thank you to the panelists who have come forward and who have given us a lot of thought-provoking information so that we can go and, as Mrs. Nichols says, look in the mirror and see how, who, when, and where we can help. So I thank you very much, each one of you, distinguished panelists, and we do appreciate the information that you've given to us. I would also like to give special thanks to our sponsors, because without their financial support, we would not be able to come together here today. And those sponsors include the U.S. Embassy, the Pan American Development Foundation, the Pan American Health Organization, Alive, Fidelity Bank, FT Consultants, Diamond International, and the Caribbean Bottling Company. We would also like to thank our esteemed partners, those who are working along with the Zonta clubs in this great, great work and this great initiative. And that includes Dr. Robin Roberts from the Gender-Based Violence Task Force, as well as Mrs. Sands, the Crisis Center, the Department of Gender and Family Affairs, and the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development, the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Mr. Wendell Jones of Jones Communications Network, and the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources. There were a number of persons working behind the scenes. All of this took a great deal of work, time, meetings, efforts, and so I'd like to say a special thank you to the committee, the Say No Committee, and that is Mrs. Marissa Mason-Smith, the chair, Anne-Marie Bain, and Dr. Teresa Adderley Smith, both co-chairs, President Ruth Ann Roll of the Nassau Club, Nina Maynard, Jennifer Brennan, Annie Brennan Carroll, Monique Sands, Malvern Bain, and Sharice Archer. I would also like to thank the many Zontians, all of the Zontians from both clubs, for whatever role was played in these events, and it has all been done in the fulfillment of the vision of Zonta International. And that vision is a world in which women's rights are recognized as human rights, and every woman is able to achieve her full potential. In such a world, women have access to all resources and are represented in decision-making positions on an equal basis with men. In such a world, no woman lives in fear. And finally, I would like to say a great thank you to the magnificent audience, all of you that are in here, and those that are hearing us via the radio, television, and streaming media. Thank you for being with us today in this national initiative. Again, thanks to all of you, and a very good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my should I say hostess for this evening wants to talk about some shoes on the floor before I close out this program this evening, so I'm going to give an opportunity to talk about these shoes.
Yes.
And if our cameramen can take a look at those shoes.
Yes, I just want to say that those shoes represent the lives of victims that have been lost due to domestic violence. It says, "Walk a day in my shoe." And we can say a lot tonight, but we have not walked a day in their shoe because they're not here with us. So if we can take away those shoes by just saving one life tonight, Our statistics shows that we've had over 9,000 plus assault cases reported in the Bahamas. And so here we are, we're just showing that we need to have them memorialized by saying walk a day in their shoe.
I understand you're looking for a job in broadcasting.
Yes.
I don't know. We'll see what we can do, Vaughn Miller. How did she do? She was all right?
All right, hired.
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much for watching and listening to our program this evening. And again, we thank our panelists. Thank you very much for tuning in. And we thank all of the Zontians who have assisted Jones Communications in bringing this town meeting to you this evening. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
We're losing too many women. Stop the violence against women. We need to love our women and take care of the women. Stop abusing the women. We're losing too many women, yeah. Stop the violence against women. We need to love our women, take care of the women. Stop abusing the